Millions sold, law enforcement trusted it for decades. Your grandfather swears by his, but here's what nobody's telling you about the Remington 870. Not all 870s are created equal, and when yours was made matters more than most gun buyers realize. Some rust in safes, others run for 50 years without a hiccup. Today I'm pulling back the curtain on the timeline that split this shotgun's reputation in half, showing you what Remington won't admit and proving why an old police trade-in might be smarter than buying new. Let's get into it. Disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes. Always follow local, state, and federal firearms laws. Safe gun handling is your responsibility. Check your local regulations before making any firearms purchase or modifications. The legend why the 870 became iconic. Back in 1950, Remington's design team had a problem. Their Model 31 pump gun was slick as glass but expensive to produce, with 536 separate machining operations per receiver. Winchester was eating their lunch with the Model 12, so engineers L. Ray Crittenden, Philip Haskell, Ellis Hailston, and G.E. Pickney went to work on something revolutionary, not just evolutionary. They borrowed the receiver design from their 16-gauge Model 1148 semi-auto, added dual action bars that prevented binding no matter how you worked that pump, and created a barrel extension with a locking lug cut right into it. This wasn't just clever engineering, it was brilliant cost reduction that actually improved reliability. The barrel could be swapped without tools or fittings. Headspace stayed consistent, and suddenly you had a pump gun that cost less to make but worked better than what came before it. By January 1950, Remington launched 15 different 870 variants right out of the gate. Trap guns, field guns, police models, the works. The base AP model sold for $69.95, about $15 less than a Winchester Model 12. That summer, Rudy Etchen used a brand new 870 trap to become the first shooter to ever break 100 straight trap doubles at the Grand American Handicap. The gun wasn't just cheaper, it was a proven performer from day one. Law enforcement noticed, so did the Marines, who adopted the Mark I variant in the Vietnam era with a 7-shot tube and bayonet lug. By 1966, Remington had sold 1 million 870s. By 1973, 2 million. By 2009, over 10 million had left the factory. This wasn't marketing hype, this was a design that simply worked everywhere it was asked to work. The split, old Remington versus new Remington. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. In 2007, a private equity firm called Cerberus Capital Management, under the Freedom Group umbrella. If you're wondering what distressed investment means in practice, the next decade will show you. Freedom Group's playbook was textbook corporate rating. Maximize short-term profits, squeeze every nickel from the brand's reputation while the getting was good. Experienced machinists and armorers who'd been making 870s for decades fired. Replaced with cheaper, less skilled labor. Quality control processes that caught defects before guns left the factory scaled back or eliminated. The company essentially gutted the craftsmanship that built the 870's reputation. The Express line, introduced in the 1980s as a budget alternative to the Wingmaster, became the canary in the coal mine. Around the early 2000s, reports started trickling in about surface rust appearing on brand new guns, sticky extraction with factory ammo, rough actions that felt gritty straight from the box. By 2007 and beyond, those trickles became a flood. Owners reported rust, sticky extraction, rough actions, and weak springs. What changed? The finish. Pre-Freedom Group Express models used a serviceable matte blue. Post-buyout guns got what can charitably be called black oxide, but functions more like surface treatment with aspirations. The finish isn't true Parkerized, it's a black oxide or something similar that rusts easily. Dealers were wiping down inventory twice a week to prevent rust on guns that hadn't even been sold yet. Police models held up better because they ran on a separate production line with stricter QC and metal trigger assemblies instead of plastic. But even those weren't immune to corner cutting. The 1990s police magnums are widely considered the sweet spot, combining proven Parkerized finishes with tight tolerances and minimal MIM parts. By 2010, even police models showed finish degradation and fitment issues coming from the factory. The timeline matters because a 1985 Wingmaster and a 2015 Express might both say Remington 870 on the receiver, but they're not the same gun in any way that counts. The brutal truth, finish and corrosion reality. Let's talk about the elephant rusting in the room. An indestructible shotgun shouldn't develop orange freckles after one rainy hunt, followed by proper cleaning and oiling. But Freedom Group era 870 Express models do exactly that. Owners report rust appearing incredibly quickly. sometimes within hours of use in wet conditions, even after thorough cleaning and oiling. The Express finish is porous, almost sponge-like in how it holds moisture. If you live anywhere humid, near a coast, or hunt waterfowl, this becomes a constant maintenance battle. Compare that to Parkerized police magnums from the 1990s or earlier Wingmasters with proper bluing. Those guns shed water and resist oxidation because the finish actually penetrates and bonds with the steel. The newer Express finish sits on top and flakes off under use. I've seen 870 Express shotguns with surface rust on magazine tubes, barrel bands, and receiver flats after sitting in a climate-controlled safe with a light oil coat. That's not user error, that's metallurgy failure. The fix exists. Cerakote, Duracoat, or a proper hot bluing job will protect those guns, but you shouldn't need aftermarket refinishing on a gun you just bought. The fact that entire cottage industries exist around refinishing post-2007 Remingtons tells you everything about how far quality slipped. Storage matters more with these guns than it should. Dehumidifiers, silica gel packs, silicone gun stocks, frequent wipe-downs with CLP, all of it becomes necessary just to prevent oxidation. My pre-Freedom Group Police Magnum from 1994, I've left that gun in a truck bed under a tarp in humid Louisiana summer for a weekend and wiped surface moisture off with zero rust. My buddy's 2012 Express rusted in his house closet in Arizona after being shot once and cleaned thoroughly. The chemistry just isn't there anymore. The brutal truth, out-of-the-box reliability isn't guaranteed. If your new 870 Express won't extract fired hulls smoothly, congratulations, you're not alone. Rough chambers and sticky extraction are common complaints, often requiring chamber polishing to fix. Factory chambers on many post-2007 guns are left rough from the reamer, with tool marks visible to the naked eye if you shine a light down the bore. When you fire a shell, the hull expands into those grooves. On extraction, the case sticks, and you're fighting the gun just to eject spent brass or plastic. The fix is stupid simple but shouldn't be necessary. A chamber polish with 320 grit sandpaper wrapped around a properly sized dowel, followed by 600 grit, then a final buff with 0000 steel wool and oil. 10 minutes of work transforms extraction. But here's the deal, police armorers used to do this before 870Ps left the factory. Now it's on you, the buyer, to finish what Remington started. MIM extractors don't help. Cast metal injection molding produces parts faster and cheaper, but they're brittle compared to milled or forged extractors. When an MIM extractor claw chips or breaks under heavy use, you're looking at failures to extract until you replace it with an aftermarket machined unit from Coltson or Wilson Combat. Actions on new guns feel gritty because internal surfaces aren't being finished to previous standards. The bolt, action bars, and carrier all need hand fitting and polishing that simply isn't happening at scale anymore. You can fix it yourself with emery cloth, a Dremel, patience, and YouTube tutorials, or you can pay a gunsmith. Either way, you're doing QC that Remington used to handle. This is what separates a $250 police trade-in that's been properly maintained from a $400 new Express. The trade-in was built right the first time, and if it needed fixes, an armorer already did them. The new gun is a project waiting to happen. The brutal truth, the trigger and controls are fine. Fine doesn't win fights. The factory 870 trigger breaks somewhere between 4 and 6 pounds with creep, stacking, and grit you can feel through gloves. It's not dangerous, it's not terrible, but it's not conducive to precision either. For buckshot at home defense distances, it's adequate. For slugs past 50 yards or trying to thread a turkey's neck at 40 steps, that trigger is actively holding you back. Remington knows this because they sell XM, formerly BX, trigger upgrade as a drop-in fix. It brings pull weight down to around 2.5 to 3 pounds with a cleaner break. Why isn't that trigger standard? Every dollar saved per trigger multiplied across millions of units equals profit. The crossbolt safety placement works brilliantly for right-handed shooters. For lefties, it's a reach that breaks your grip and slows down manipulation under stress. Mossberg's tang safety is objectively more ambidextrous. Remington could have addressed this decades ago but chose not to. The magazine tube cap is fine until you try to unscrew it with cold, wet hands or gloves on. Aftermarket knurled caps from Wilson or S&J Hardware solve this for $20, but again, why should you need to? The answer is that Remington designed the 870 in an era when good enough actually was, and the market has moved past them. Fine and adequate might have cut it in 1975 when your choices were the 870, a Mossberg 500, or a Winchester 1200. Today you're competing against shotguns with user-adjustable triggers, ambidextrous controls, and enhanced ergonomics straight from the factory. The 870's manual of arms is solid, proven, teachable, but it's not optimal. And if you're serious about defensive shotgunning or precision slug work, you'll spend money fixing what should have been right from day one. The brutal truth, ammo sensitivity nobody talks about. Pump guns are supposed to eat anything, right? Mostly, but not entirely. The 870's chamber dimensions and extractor tension make it pickier about ammunition than people admit, especially in guns with rough chambers. Low brass target loads and cheap promotional ammo often have inconsistent rim thickness and case length tolerances. In a chamber that hasn't been polished, these shells can stick, misfeed, or extract with difficulty. This isn't the gun being broken, it's the gun being built to minimum spec, meaning ammunition built to minimum spec. Tight tolerances across both would solve it, but nobody's incentivized to tighten up when good enough ships product. High brass magnum loads typically extract easier because chamber pressure is higher, forcing the hull to release cleanly. But run a few hundred rounds of cheap birdshot through an unpolished 870 Express and you'll start seeing patterns. Every fifth or sixth round hangs up on extraction. You'll short stroke the action trying to power through it, end up with a double feed, and curse the gun when the problem is really a combination of rough machining and bargain ammunition. Steel-cased ammunition? Forget it unless you've polished that chamber to a mirror shine. Steel doesn't compress and expand like brass or even plastic, so any roughness in the chamber becomes an extraction nightmare. This matters for budget-conscious shooters buying surplus or economy loads. If you're going to run cheap ammo, you have to prep the gun first. That means chamber polish, extractor inspection, and cleaning every 100 rounds instead of every 300. The myth that pump guns are bomb-proof and ammo-agnostic comes from an era when quality control on both the gun and ammunition was simply higher across the board. Quick pause if you're enjoying the video, tap that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps us reach more great folks like you. Alright, back to it. Home defense reality check. Would you trust your 870 at 3 in the morning? If it's pre-2007 Wingmaster or Police Magnum that's been maintained, absolutely. If it's a 2015 Express that's been shot twice and stored oiled in your closet, maybe. If that Express has a rough chamber you've never addressed and you're loading it with bargain buckshot you've never patterned, you're gambling. Defensive use of any firearm demands reliability under the worst possible conditions. Cold, dark, adrenaline dump, fumbling the reload, short-stroking the pump because you're terrified. The 870's manual of arms is simple enough to execute under stress, but only if the gun has been set up correctly and you've trained with it. That means chamber polish, quality defensive ammunition, federal flight control, Hornady critical defense or equivalent, proper lubrication, and regular function checks. It means you've actually patterned your buckshot at the distances you'd realistically engage threats in your home. Most people don't do this. They buy the cheapest 12 gauge they can find, load it with whatever double-aught buck was on sale, and assume it'll work because it's a shotgun. The Second Amendment exists to protect your ability to defend yourself and your loved ones. That right means nothing if your tool fails when it matters most. An 870 can be a phenomenal defensive shotgun, but only if you've addressed its weak points, verified its function with your chosen ammunition, and trained enough to run it smoothly under stress. Reputation doesn't stop threats, preparation does. If you're betting your life on a Freedom Group era Express straight out of the box with no modifications or testing, you're being optimistic to the point of negligence. How to make an 870 actually live up to the legend? First, polish that chamber, it's non-negotiable. Get a 12-gauge chamber mop, wrap it in 320 grit sandpaper, chuck it in a drill, and spin it inside the chamber with light pressure for 30 seconds. Switch to 600 grit. Repeat. Finish with quadruple steel wool and oil. Check your work by firing 5 rounds of your intended defensive or hunting ammo. If extraction is smooth and effortless, you're done. If not, repeat until it is. This single modification solves 90% of reliability complaints with Freedom Group's 870s. Second, place the extractor if it's MIM. A machined extractor from Workhorses, Wilson Combat, or another quality manufacturer will outlast the gun and cost about $15. While you're in there, inspect the ejector spring. If it's weak or deformed, replace it. These are wear parts that Remington cheaped out on, and they're easy fixes. Third, upgrade the magazine follower and spring. Factory plastic followers can bind or deform. Aluminum followers from Scattergun Technologies or similar manufacturers eliminate this issue and cost about $10. A heavy-duty magazine spring from Wolf ensures reliable feeding even under adverse conditions. Fourth, consider the trigger. If you're using the gun for anything requiring precision, a Timney or similar drop-in trigger makes a massive difference in practical accuracy. If you're keeping it as a working field gun, clean and lubricate the factory trigger group roughly and live with it. Fifth, address the finish if rust is an issue. Cerakote is the gold standard for durability and corrosion resistance. If that's out of budget, even quality spray-on finishes like Duracoat or Brownell's Illuma Hide 2 will protect better than the factory express finish. Disassemble the gun, degrease everything, cleaning, apply per instructions, cure properly, and you'll have a gun that actually resists the elements. Finally, test your work. Fire at least 100 rounds through the modified gun to verify reliability. Clean it, let it sit for a week, fire it again. Verify that rust isn't forming anywhere despite environmental exposure. Only after you've confirmed that the gun runs consistently should you trust it for serious use. This isn't Bubba gunsmithing, this is finishing what Remington should have done before the gun left the factory. Comparison without naming rivals too hard. The 870 didn't fall behind because it's fundamentally flawed, it fell behind because competitors improved while Remington coasted on reputation and cut corners on execution. Mossberg figured out ambidextrous controls decades ago, Benelli figured out how to make a pump gun that short strokes are nearly impossible on. Turkish imports figured out how to deliver acceptable quality at half the price. Meanwhile, Remington was busy firing experienced workers and replacing blue steel with whatever finish was cheapest that week. The bones of the 870 are still excellent. The dual-action bars, the steel receiver, the barrel extension lockup, all of it is sound engineering that holds up today. But sound engineering doesn't matter if quality control isn't there to execute it consistently. A properly built 870 from the 1990s will outlast and outperform many modern shotguns, even premium ones. A sloppily assembled 2012 Express won't. The frustrating part is knowing that Remington had the knowledge, the tooling, and the workforce to maintain their standard, but chose short-term profit over long-term reputation. The good news is that Remington emerged from bankruptcy in 2020 under new ownership, with production moving to LaGrange, Georgia. Early reports on the new RemArms 870 Fieldmaster suggest quality is improving, though it's too early to declare victory. The company seems to understand that they have to rebuild trust, one properly finished receiver at a time. Whether they follow through remains to be seen, but at least they're acknowledging the problem, which is more than Freedom Group ever did. The hard question: would you buy a new 870 today? If it's a current production RemArms Fieldmaster or Wingmaster and you can inspect it in person before purchase, maybe. If it's old Freedom Group stock sitting on a dealer's shelf, absolutely not, unless you're planning to treat it as a project gun requiring immediate modifications. Is an old police trade-in the smarter move? In most cases, yes. A 1995 Police Magnum that's been rack-ridden for 20 years and shows honest wear will likely be more reliable than a 2014 Express that's been babied. The fundamentals are just better on older guns. Does legacy still matter in a defensive firearm? Only if it translates to actual performance. The 870's legacy is real, earned through millions of rounds fired in the field, in combat, and on the range. But that legacy belongs to guns built when Remington still cared about their reputation. A logo on the receiver doesn't stop rust, it doesn't smooth a rough chamber, and it doesn't make a weak extractor suddenly functional. Your defensive tool needs to work, period. If an 870 can do that after you've addressed its known issues, great. If not, your Second Amendment rights deserve better than blind brand loyalty. The Remington 870 doesn't need marketing hype. It needs owners who understand what they bought and when it was made. Pre-2007 guns are still top-tier workhorses. Post-2007 requires work to get there. But informed gun owners are stronger defenders of the Second Amendment, and that starts with honest assessment. Drop your 870 experience in the comments, and if this helped, subscribe to Guns You Can't Live Without for more truth over marketing.